Obviously, the first thing you need to do to travel as a single parent is to have a child. Now, of course, that makes total sense, but what you also need to have is either custody of that child, or you need a letter of consent to travel with that child from the other parent or guardian. Now, in my divorce, I won custody, both physical and legal custody, 100%. There are no stipulations or anything like that. I have my child all the time. I can travel wherever I want, basically, without any restrictions, and I don't need permission from my daughter's mother to go anywhere. That's just how my divorce played out. I won it, so I get all the control. Not everybody gets that, so if you're a single parent traveler who wants to travel with your child but you're not divorced and you need permission, then you need to get a letter of consent. I'll actually link down to something in the description box so you can find an easy version of that you can just download and fill out real quick if you need one. Now, I actually haven't needed to prove that I was traveling alone as a single parent in very many instances. I think maybe one time when I came into Colombia back in 2015, they might have asked me about the parenting status of the other parent and where they were. But other than that, most countries haven't been asking me, and I haven't really needed to show anybody the documentation that I have custody of her. Although it is something that I need whenever I have to get us a new visa or apply for a new passport or something like that. So if you want to travel as a single parent, you either need to have full custody or you need to have that letter of consent. Although it's not always mandatory everywhere you go, it's a good idea to have it on you and a copy of it at all times. Well, the next thing that you need to have, I believe, is some savings in your bank account. I don't want to scare you about this. You don't need to be super rich in order to travel as a single parent, but I do recommend that you have some savings. Initially, when I first started traveling, I only had about $1,500 in my bank account, maybe $2,000, I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't very much money, and I remember feeling like I didn't have a lot of wiggle room at the time. But having at least that $1,500 or maybe $2,000 more if you can in your bank account ready to protect you if anything happens while you're traveling is a good idea. Of course, it will protect you in emergencies, but it will also give you a little bit of cushion so you can find maybe a job while you're traveling or give you a little bit of time just to get settled before you really get your life going again. If you have those savings, you're probably still going to need income on the road. If you want to make money while you're traveling, there are at least two ways you can do it. The first one is online. That's what I'm doing now. All my income is generated off of the internet. But you could also find a job abroad. And there are actually some pretty good jobs out there for single parents. For example, if you have a degree and a teaching certificate, or a degree and a TEFL certificate, you can teach pretty much anywhere in the world. And if you get into a good enough school, say like a popular international school, then it's very likely that your children can get free tuition into that school as well. I've done that several times. I worked in Colombia where my daughter got free tuition. I ran a summer camp in Vietnam where my daughter got free tuition. And not only does that help you during the day because while you're working, they're doing something, but that tuition is usually quite expensive at these international schools. The summer camp, for example, in Vietnam cost at least $1,500 for just 7 weeks for the kids to attend. So since I ran that camp, I roughly got $1,500 extra that I didn't have to pay for my child to go into the program. Working online is always my favorite thing to do, and I will actually link you up to a video that I made about how to get started on Upwork.com if you want to travel and freelance at the same time. But I can tell you that there are also pretty good ways to make money while traveling. When I was teaching in Hong Kong, for example, I was saving roughly $700 per month on a teaching salary, and at that time I was still married, so I was supporting myself, my ex-wife now, and my daughter. So on a 3-person budget, on one teaching job, I was saving roughly $700 per month in one of the most expensive cities in Asia. There are places you can go to make more money than that, like South Korea, and there are places where you can go to make less money but maybe live a better life, like Thailand. And I actually made a video about moving to Thailand on a budget. Here you go. And ironically enough, it only costs about $1,500 to move there. When you are considering traveling as a single parent, you should always try to find somewhere that is going to let you live within a good budget. So you don't want to live somewhere necessarily like Hong Kong like I did because it can be quite expensive. I moved there because that's where my ex-wife was from. That's where all my daughter's family was. So it was just kind of selected for me in the beginning. I think it's a great place to make money, but I don't think it's one of the best places to live or raise a child. Some better places that I would consider would be Mexico. I've actually moved to Mexico. I made a video about that. Check it out. But I think it's a great first option for people. For one, it's really close to the United States. It's really close to Canada. So it's really easy to get home. Or if you have some family members who want to come visit you, it's also easy for them to do so. Moreover, Mexico also lets you arrive on a 6-month visa, so you don't have to necessarily gain residency like I did. But if you want to get residency, there are easy ways to do it, both temporary residency and permanent residency. Again, more in that playlist that I linked you up to and will be down in the description box. Another place where I would recommend living, and that is where I am right now, is in beautiful Colombia. Actually, it's quite foggy out today and it's not so pretty, but Colombia is gorgeous and it's even less expensive than Mexico, I would say. It costs a little bit more to move down here, but when comparing apartments between places that I've lived in Mexico and places that I've lived in Colombia, you get a much better deal in Colombia. Specifically, I'm living in Medellin. I love it here, and I think it's a great place for expats and people with kids. It's got perfect weather, delicious food, great amenities, and it's not dangerous like people pretend it is. And if you're like me and from the United States, you know that, say, going out to a lunch or dinner at even one of the chain restaurants is going to cost $20 or $30 for a single person. Whereas if I take my daughter out to lunch here in Colombia, it's going to cost us less than $5, even if we eat at the mall. We also got our teeth cleaned yesterday at the dentist, both of us. Mine cost $21, hers cost $15. This is without insurance of any type. It cost $36 to get both of our mouths cleaned. I remember I had to take her to the doctor once because she got really sick in Thailand. And how much did that doctor visit cost without insurance? $15. So just moving out of the United States automatically saves you thousands of dollars per year on healthcare costs. Literally, my health insurance payments in the United States per month cost more than what it cost me for a year to travel and take care of ourselves. That is insane. People don't realize how expensive the United States is, but it is borderline bonkers. And it's a great opportunity to learn Spanish because the people here speak a very clear accent and they're very helpful and friendly. So something else you need to think about if you want to be a single dad nomad like me or a single parent traveler is that you get to choose your lifestyle. This has been an absolute blessing for me, not gonna lie at all. America is, let me parse my words properly here. America is a fascist nanny state that intrudes on people's lives to no end. Now you might be thinking, hey, I'm an American, it doesn't seem that fascistic. We have all the freedoms in the world. Wrong. For example, let's start off with just children's education. There are many states that you have to follow some type of education, or you could get in trouble, even be put in jail for not following that certain type of education. Now, I'm from Michigan, which is one of the most lenient states when it comes to homeschooling, so thankfully they can't really say anything to me, even if I was living back in the United States. But I know there are a lot of states that are really strict on that, and if you're not keeping your kids up to a certain program or a certain type of curriculum, you're going to get in trouble. Okay, this is absolutely ridiculous. People should be allowed to educate their children how they want. And if you're a single dad nomad like me or a single parent traveler, then you can just do whatever you want and not have to worry about some government telling you what you have to do with your child. And all you have to do to get away from that is just travel on your own. And then people will just leave you and your kids alone. Furthermore, you're just not going to be as stressed as you are when you're living in the United States. I remember doing the 9 to 5, having to wake up 2 hours before work, get dressed, get my daughter to school, get into traffic, struggle through traffic, get to work, not enjoy my job, get off work, rush to get into the second job, kind of enjoy that job, and then finally when I get home at night, my daughter's already ready for bed. So I've just found that it's much more relaxed living outside of the United States. The cultures around the world are much more chill. They're not constantly struggling and stressing themselves like the US is. The idea of road rage doesn't exist as much outside of the United States. And lastly, we all know that the United States is one of the most well-armed populations in the world, and so some people might not feel very good walking around Game of Thrones if they don't have their own sword. That can be really stressful. I know that when I'm in the States, it's always kind of in the back of my mind whenever I go to the grocery store or to a restaurant that I want to be able to know where the exits are, how I can get out quickly, because you just never know what's going to happen in the US with such a well-armed population. Moreover, there's just a lot more you can do in terms of entertainment while you are traveling the world and living outside of your home country. For example, let's say that my daughter and I want to go out on a Saturday morning and it's 10 o'clock and we want to enjoy Hong Kong as we walk around a park. It might be really hot out and I might want a cold beer. What I can do in Hong Kong is walk into any 7-Eleven, open up the fridge, grab a beer, take it to the counter, pay for it. They will open it for me right there, and I can walk outside drinking it on the street. No problem at all. No one's going to say a word. If a police officer sees you doing that in the US, is going to stop you and ticket you for open intoxication. Even though you're not drunk, you're just drinking one beer. Whereas in other cultures, people just mind their own damn business and let you do whatever you want. Big reason that I'm a single parent nomad is that the world's governments leave me alone. The United States is the worst. Another way you can choose your lifestyle as a single dad nomad or a single parent traveler is that your dating options are much, much better. Now for me, when I'm in the United States, and I'm just going to use Tinder as an example, even though I don't like using that app anymore, but here's a good example using that. When I'm in the United States and if I'm using Tinder, I could swipe right on everybody, and because I'm a single dad and not a 10 out of 10, well then I don't get that many matches, and certainly not with girls that I'm interested in. However, if I go to some place like Vietnam or Colombia or Hong Kong, all of a sudden I'm matching with 9s and 10s all day, and I'm always dating up instead of down. And I think that could be true for pretty much anybody, is that if you travel to another country, you kind of become exotic yourself in a way, and people like you just because of your accent or your unique look, and that kind of just bumps you up a few points automatically. So if you're a single parent and you want to travel or be a nomad, I'm going to tell you right now that if you are looking for some booty, you're going to find it. Lastly, and I think this is quite important, and not a lot of travelers and nomads talk about this, it's that because you have your reduced cost of living and that you're not so stressed all the time traveling as a single parent and living this single dad nomad life, well then all of a sudden you have the freedom both in your life and your bank account to be able to visit family whenever you need to. For example, if there's an emergency and you need to fly home, or if you want to go home for a vacation to see somebody get married or something like that. And I always think about it like this. If I was living in the United States, would I have the money to be able to afford an emergency vacation to Colombia where I get to go and visit the beach and some castles? No, probably not, because all of my money is going back into health insurance costs, it's going back into car payments, it's going back into high price rent, whereas when I'm living outside of the United States, my cost of living is so low that I can always talk myself into being able to afford traveling home if I need to. So for example, a few months ago, my grandpa passed away. He was 93 years old, and it was really difficult, but it wasn't hard for me to hop online, pick up 2 tickets for myself and my daughter, and then fly home to make sure that we were there for the rest of the family. The expenses of buying a last-minute flight and making it so close to when we were leaving was not a big deal, because the whole purpose of living abroad is to increase your bank account and make your life easier for you. And so it was actually quite easy to buy that ticket and fly back home. Being a single dad nomad gives me much more freedom, flexibility, and control over my life.